Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna talk about the Edward Albee's play, The Zoo Story, as an absurd play. So let's get started. Historical context of the drama. When The Zoo Story was written in 1958, Americans were racing to obtain what was called the American Dreams. The background of the dream was the result of World War II. World War II left America and its allies in a horror condition, so Albee could create an atmosphere through these emerging burning social issues into his blooming writings to be able for using the various absurdist techniques in this The Zoo Story to employ the themes of existentialism for emphasizing on the absurdity of the situation, time, place where the generations are facing and suffering in the contemporary American artificial society. Edward Albee brings out this kind of crisis of modern human life in almost all of his plays. The crisis of modern human life is due to the lack of communication, individualism, materialism, alienation, and lack of motivation for living life. Edward Albee in his plays explore the tragedy of modern man in a very sensitive and comprehensive way. From the beginning of his career, his ears were sensitive to the voices of anguish of human life. Absurd title. The theme of an absurdity lies in the title. The Zoo Story, where a story is not told, the title refers only to its theme. It can be said more about the play called The Zoo Story, but Jerry never actually tells us what happens at the zoo. That's how communication in a modern world works, poorly and strangely, which often further roots to misconception, misunderstanding, and lack of compassion. Moreover, the word zoo is a symbolic representation of caged souls of human beings. Language. Despite its apparent nonsense language, a great number of the dialogues in absurdist plays can be regarded naturalist. The moments when characters resort to nonsense language, thus creating a misunderstanding among the characters, make theatre of the absurdist distinctive. Language frequently gains a certain phonetic, rhythmical, almost musical quality, opening up a wide range of often comedic playfulness. It consists of absurd and naturalistic elements contradictory because of the inability of verbal communication and end of talks in the senseless dialogues where absurdism lies in the dialogue because it is a more or less. Jerry's monologue is free from the time and conditions. Even though the absurdity lies in the title, The Zoo Story, where a story is not told, the title refers only to its themes. Language in the play seems designed to isolate us, which is maybe why Jerry feels the best form of connection he can hope for is to have somebody stab him. Repetition. Repetitive or nonsensical dialogues are the other feature of absurd literature. It can be said more about the play called The Zoo Story, but Jerry never actually tells us what happens at the zoo. That's how communication works in this play, poorly and strangely. Jerry babbles on and Peter doesn't understand him, and then there's more babbling and less understanding, and then there's sadness and screaming, all culminating with blood on the bench. Part of what absurd about the theatre of the absurd is that language just gives us confusion and discomfort. Setting. The setting, in other words, is meant to be all nice and quiet and comfortable to contrast with the dirty, messy unpleasantness and absurdity of existence as in the Zoo Story. Being an absurd play, everything looks neat and ordered, but actually it is not, as shown in the case of the Zoo Story, that Jerry and Peter are sitting on a bench in a peaceful environment, but within themselves they are fighting a hostile battle with the society. Absurd characters, flat characters. In this play, The value is on a fictive location, and characters do not have any personality and often nameless, feel imprisoned, ignored, and not accepted by own society. The characters in the absurdist drama are lost and floating in an incomprehensible universe, and they have abandoned rational devices and discursive thought because these approaches are inadequate. Many characters appear as autonomous automatons stuck in routines, speaking only in cliché. Characters are frequently stereotypical, archetypical, or flat characters. Here are two main characters, Peter and Jerry. Both of these characters are almost the same from the beginning to the end. There is no character development in the play. The dramatists give hardly an effort to portray their psychological development, and Albee applied only the interpersonal psychological theory of societal behavior and knowledge to Jerry's inner conflict and motivations to opt for self-immolation, which leads to explore the mental, behavioral, and social factors that encourage Jerry to end with his own life that shows absurdity only in this play. Plot. Plot can consist of the absurd repetition of cliché and routine. Absence, emptiness, nothingness, and unresolved mysteries are central features in absurdist plots. In the Zoo story, there are two characters, namely Peter and Jerry, where Jerry is messed up. He keeps two empty picture frame in his room because he says, I don't have pictures of anyone to put in them. Jerry is unpredictable and dangerous, but that's why he holds our attention. I find it hard to believe that people such as that really are. Peter says, and though he is referring to Jerry's landlady, he could just as easily mean Jerry himself. Peter's a boring guy. He got a wife, two daughters, and few parakeets and cat. He comes out to the park on Sunday and sits on the bench and reads Time magazines. In part, Albee wrote the play because he too thought Peter was a bit of a blank. Jerry is fully developed three-dimensional character, but Peter is backboard. He is not fully developed. Peter had to be more fleshed out, Albee told to an interviewer. The story of the zoo is never told that keeps to absurd notion because it reflects how sometimes the word just doesn't make sense. According to the philosophy of absurdity, humans want to find value and meaning. They want to know what happened at the zoo, but the word frustrates them. It won't tell them about the zoo. This is why people in general are cranky and filled with despair. Therefore, the plot explores the life situation of the modern man, the pointless and absurdity of the human situation. It is also possible to read the play as a picture of problem and conflicts of an existential character. Allusions. Literary and philosophical references that are found in the play are actually according to the context of the time. Some of the allusions are referring to the main famous personalities of Charles Baudelaire, Sigmund Freud, J.P. Marquand. Theme. The main characteristic of absurd play is to show that life is essentially meaningless, hence miserable. There is no hope because of the inevitable futility of man's effort. Man is fascinated by death, which permanently replaces dreams and illusions. There is no action or plot. Very little happens because nothing meaningful can happen. The final situation is absurd or comic. One of the themes of existentialism among isolation, loneliness, incommunication, social disparity, and dehumanization is paradox in an artificial, produced, and materialistic American society. The Zoo story is a seminal work in that it introduces themes which reoccur in almost all of Albee's play. The principal fact is that the lack of contact between human beings and the reluctant apathy, indifference, self-destructiveness, and cruelty. The point is brought home by meeting between two characters, Jerry and Peter. The whole action is in the form of paradox conversation between them until it culminates in the death of Jerry. While traditionally audiences expect the well-made, psychologically realistic characters, witty dialogues, and well-crafted casual plots with neatly tied-up beginnings, middles, and end. But the theatre of the absurd subverts these expectations at every turn. Thank you. That's all for today.